Hi, all of you. I hope all of you are able to hear me clearly and also see my screen. If anybody has any technical issue, please let us know. All right. Now this is the demonstration session for SAP BW 7.5, BW 7.5 powered by SAP HANA, and also the BW 7.5 edition for SAP HANA. All right. Hello, guys. Are you able to hear me? All right. All right. So a technical difficulty here. I hope all of you are able to hear my voice and also see my screen. In case anybody has any technical issue, if you're not able to hear me or see my screen, just make sure you raise your hand. The options there on the GoToMeeting panel. Technical team will be able to attend to you. All right. Now this demonstration is about the latest version of BW, which is the SAP BW 7.5, and also with a combination of BW 7.5 with the underlying database, which is SAP HANA. We will also be looking at the BW 7.5 edition for SAP HANA, which is the Eclipse edition, which we'll be working on the SAP HANA Studio. Now, a couple of instructions before we go ahead. Just give me a second. All right, as we go ahead, I hope all of you are logged in as attendees and not as organizers. The session is organized by Techie Training, and they'll be recording the session. All right, so once this session is complete, the recording will be sent to you as a uploaded link. You can download that, so don't worry about recording the session. All right. And in case you have any kinds of issues, just make sure you can click on the raise hand option, which basically allows our technical team to attend to you. Also, if you want to leave the session, just make sure you go ahead and exit and do not end the meeting for all, so that it doesn't stop the session for everybody. All right. So in case you want to leave, you can just click on leave meeting. All right. At the end of the session or in between, in case you have any questions, if you raise your hand, I'd be able to unmute the microphone for you so that you can ask any questions. In case you have any questions, otherwise you can type it in the chat menu and we'd be able to read that aloud and then answer your questions as well. At the end, time will be given for questions, so I'll take questions at the end. But in case your question cannot wait till the end, just make sure you go ahead and type that in the chat, or you can raise your hand. All right. Any kind of technical issues, you can Skype Techie Training, or you can call us at 201-478-8484 and they'd be able to help you. All right, so all of you know BW has been there for almost 3 decades now, and there have been a lot of improvements in functionalities. There have been improvements in how the versioning has changed, and also uh, the latest buzzword that we have is SAP HANA, and how we have SAP HANA and its features integrated into the latest versions of BW's uh, 7.5, right? So this demo session that we have today basically highlights what we have new and what we are going to cover during this training sessions, which involve BW 7.5 with also the features of having HANA as an underlying database. Not just working on the application side of BW, but also working with the HANA side of it, also on the edition. All right. So we've seen or we've heard about BW 7.5. We've heard about HANA as an underlying database, but working directly on the application of BW directly from the HANA Studio. So I'm going to try and simplify that and then show you what exactly we mean by all of these topics. All right. So the course curriculum basically will consist of these scenarios. I will also be showing you the curriculum that we'd be looking through. We'd be covering BW the 362, which is the document that we'd be using for this particular training program. We're going to cover BW, we're going to cover BW on HANA, and we're going to cover the edition on HANA. Now, for working on BW on HANA, you have to have an idea about how SAP HANA works, all right? As a database, as an appliance, we need to understand how this particular BW, the SAP HANA works. So we're going to talk about the HANA system as well, and then we will talk about BW on HANA. So basically, our curriculum will have an introduction, and then we will talk about the concepts of HANA. All right, what are the new concepts that we have from the HANA database? HANA is an in-memory database, and we will have to understand how the modeling happens in that database. Before we understand the concepts of BW on HANA, we need to understand that. So the first part of our curriculum will be trying to understand SAP HANA. Once that is done, the unit 2 will be migration to BW on HANA. Apart from just understanding HANA, for this we need to also have a clear understanding of BW. So we're going to talk about not just HANA, but also the BW application. So for some of you who already know BW, Guys, can you hear me now? All right. I hope all of you are able to hear me. All right. All right, let me repeat myself. All right, this curriculum basically consists of 7 areas that we're going to cover. All right. Unit 1 basically is where we're going to talk about the fundamentals of this curriculum. Now, this particular curriculum, we're going to cover the latest version of 7.5 BW on HANA. So the fundamentals of understanding HANA, modeling on HANA, and also the modeling in BW, the fundamentals of modeling in BW, we're going to cover that in Unit 1. All right. The second unit that we're going to talk about is about the migration to BW on HANA. All right. Now, in BW 7.5, basically, how do we go ahead and migrate to use HANA as an underlying database is what we're going to look through in this particular unit. All right. So how do we migrate onto BW on HANA? If it's a completely new installation of BW on HANA, how are we going to do that? And in case we've been using, let's say, Oracle or SQL as an underlying database before, and how do we go ahead and migrate to BW on the HANA system? What options do we have, and what is the best way to take up to use BW with underlying database of SAP HANA? All right. Unit 3 basically talks about the data management of BW on HANA. All right. Now, HANA is an in-memory database, and so from time to time, I mean, there are basically two kinds of instances of how we store data on HANA. One is a regular row storage, and then you also have something called as a column storage. And so there are two ways of how the system basically functions. One is when the system is on a read mode, when the system is on a write mode. All right. And so we're going to talk about how do we even try to go ahead and use the delta merge option to move it from a write mode to read mode. The basic reason is that BW is a system which basically works as a warehouse which has huge amounts of data stored on it. We'd want to cater and give the reports as quickly as possible. The regular BW might take a little time, but BW on HANA is extremely fast in terms of the reporting scenario. So basically, when you're writing data onto the BW on HANA system, which basically has HANA as an underlying database, we'd want to write the data, and also at the time of reading we want to enable it for complete read. So how do we flip-flop between writing and reading is basically the data management part that we're going to see. All right, it's not like the regular database where we write it on row stores, but we also, apart from writing onto the system or underlying database of HANA, we have to go ahead and convert that from a write mode to a read mode as well. So some of the new features that we even add on the process chains is what we will be looking at Unit 3. Unit 4 basically talks about the optimization areas in BW on HANA. Now for this, you first need to understand BW. What are the options that we have in terms of optimization, right? In terms of basically, let's say we define transformations, or in case we go ahead and define a structure, how do we optimize? For example, if I'd want to go ahead and push down my transformation capability from doing it on the application layer down onto the database layer, these options have been enabled on the BW on HANA system. Where do we do it? How do we do it? When do we do it? Is what we basically discuss in Unit 4. In terms of, let's say, if we write any kind of transformation rules, or in case we write some code basically for transformation, or if I write a start routine or an end routine inside BW, basically for transforming data, how do I push it down onto the underlying database? HANA is extremely fast in terms of calculation. So if I'd want to use the entire power of using SAP HANA as an underlying database for the BW application, the things that take time inside the application can be pushed down onto the HANA database. These options are enabled in the BW 7.5 on top of HANA database. So how do we go ahead and basically push down this onto the SAP HANA database is what we would be looking in Unit 4. Unit 5 will be modeling with SAP's reference architecture, LSA, layered structured architecture. Now, if you are working already with BW, you would have a sense of what LSA is. And then we're going to talk about also LSA++. All right. The layered structured architecture is now taken to a next level because we have new objects that we have with BW 7.5, and also because we're going to work on the studio version of BW as well. We also have a few more additional objects that are added into the BW system, like advanced DSO, open ODS view, right? Composite providers. These are also added now into the uh, newer models of objects that we can use with BW. So we will be talking about how do we basically structure them. How can we go ahead and break this down as a staging layer, as a transformation layer, as a warehousing layer, as a reporting layer? How do we go ahead and break these objects into individual layers so that we can optimize and use this specific BW on HANA system? Unit number 6 talks about hybrid modeling in mixed scenarios. All right. Now, hybrid modeling, or we call them as mixed scenarios, because with the new version that we have the ability to even use BW from the SAP HANA Studio. All right, which basically means that we can work on the Eclipse. Now, most of you, or if you have an idea with BW, usually we will go to the SAP logon pad, which basically allows us to log into the BW application or ECC application. Now, when we go into the application, we'd be working on the BW, let's say 7.5 or BW 7.5 on the HANA database. So these are both working on the application level. Now, because we're going to use BW 7.5 with HANA database, for the first time, we have the access into the underlying database as well. All this while, if you have been working or if you're new to BW, we'd be working only on the application level. But now, what we have is the access to the underlying database. It's like accessing Oracle or SQL, which is being used underlying. Now we have the access into the HANA database, which is the underlying database. Now, if I have to log into the underlying database, then I'd have to use the SAP HANA Studio. Basically, how we will be working on the HANA system. So every object that you create on the BW application is going to be written onto the underlying database, and we have access to the underlying database, and you can do that using the SAP HANA Studio. So once you log in into the SAP HANA Studio, we can go ahead and also work on one of the preference, which is basically to work on the BW modeling. And when we log into the BW modeling, we can create newer objects which we cannot create on the regular BW application. This is the Eclipse mode of how we go ahead and work on the BW system, and this is called as Edition on HANA, which is basically working on the Eclipse edition of BW. All right. So the hybrid modeling or mixed scenarios basically talk about how we can go ahead and work on the models, not directly from the BW application, but working on the SAP HANA Studio and creating these objects. All right. So we can go ahead and create a few objects like advanced ESO, open ODS view, composite providers, and also a few info objects. We also have the ability to directly access the entire BW application directly from the HANA Studio. So on a scenario, we can work both on the hybrid models and also the regular models at the same instance. All right. So we'd be working on that as well, hybrid modeling in big scenarios. Now, Unit 7 talks about how do we provide data into the BW and also to the SAP HANA database. Now we're going to talk about mixed scenarios where we will have the ability to access data at real time as well. So for that, what are the scenarios or data provisioning methods, or basically how do we provide data into SAP HANA and SAP BW is what we're going to look through. Let me quickly open an Excel and then try to give you a little overview about what we're going to see and how this entire process is going to be like. All right. All right. This might be a little redundant for some of you who have already BW knowledge, but I'm going to try and make that as simple as possible. All right. Now, in an enterprise, there are two major kinds of systems. Majority of you know about them. One is called as the transaction processing system, which we also call as the OLTP system. All right. This is the business front of the system where the functionality is basically maintained in the system, right? For example, in the SAP terminology, we call this as ECC system or CRM systems or SRM systems. All right, ECC stands for Enterprise Central Component. This particular system is usually the one that is used within the SAP landscape for daily transactions. This system is the business system which handles all the functionalities such as finance, sales and distribution, material management, inventory, HR, quality. All of these functionalities are basically inside this system, and these functionalities are integrated one to the other. All right. In the ECC system, if you want to go ahead and create any kind of transaction, you will have to open a particular screen which is defined by a transaction code, and we enter detail into that. And so that is stored in the underlying tables, basically built with that. This system is not optimized for analytics. It is not that you cannot do analytics on this system, but this is not optimized for analytics. It basically is built to handle daily transactions and not analysis on the system. But if you try to go ahead and do analysis on the system, what basically happens is you would slow down this process. All right. So as much as possible, we don't try to do analysis on the system. This is majorly used for daily transactions. But the thing is, if I want to improve my business, if I want to make my business better, or if I want to make my enterprise better, basically, I need to analyze the data that is coming through. It is not just enough to do daily transactions, but we need to better the system. And if I need to better the system, I need a system where I can analyze data. And so we also have a second system in the enterprise, which is usually used for analysis purpose, and that is in generic terms called as the OLAP system, or the analytical processing system. All right. This system basically or is designed only to handle analytics or reporting. Right. In SAP terminology, this system is called as the business warehouse or the BW environment. This process has been there for the last 20-25 years. Right. Now, if I have an OLAP system and if I want to go ahead and do some kind of analysis of the data that is basically generated in this system, I have to figure out a way to move that data from this system into the BW system. All right. And there is nothing new that I'd want to go ahead and say. This process of moving data from the OLTP system into the OLAP system is termed as extraction. All right. This terminology is basically called as extraction. To move data from a transaction system into the analytic system is called as extraction. Some people use ETL as a word to basically define that, but the process is called as extraction. SAP has understood this, and they basically built something called as extractors inside the system itself, and we'd go ahead and consume these extractors to basically move data from these underlying tables that are there in the OLTP system and move them into the BW environment, which is basically the OLAP system. So we would be learning how to basically use these extractors, which are already provided by SAP. We will also figure out how to go ahead and build the extractors from the scratch. In case there is a table that we have created on our own, or in case there is a table on which there is no extractor already built, how do we have to build these extractors? How do I try to bring this data from here into the OLAP system in an optimized fashion? Should I go ahead and bring the entire data every day, or should I be bringing incremental data? How do I design these extractors? What is the best way to design is what we understand from the term extractors and extraction. It is one of the main pillars of how we move data into the BW environment. Now, once that functionality is defined as to how to move data from these tables into the BW environment, we'll also have to understand how do we go ahead and hold that data inside the BW system. Now, there are different layers inside the BW environment, and so we need to understand which layer holds what kind of data. The persistent staging area, or in short we call it as PSA, is a mandatory layer for you to go ahead and stage data inside the BW environment. Any data that you bring in from either ECC, or it could be you bring data from any database, or you might be bringing data from, let's say, a normal Excel sheet or CSV file. You still have to stage the data on the persistent staging area. This is a mandatory staging layer that you have within BW for making corrections or holding data from the original system as is in the BW layer. Now, once you have that data staged inside the BW application, then you have different ways of how you move it and store it in different layers. Now, once you have staged the data, then you might have a transformation layer, which basically allows you to apply some business logic to transform the data so that it can work in the BW environment. That part is basically how you transform the data inside the BW environment. Here, you can do direct transformations, you can go ahead and write some routines, you can apply formulas, you can apply initial values different ways of how you can transform data. Alright, so this is the transformation layer that we use. And once we cross this layer, then we decide on how do I want to go ahead and store of objects that I use for basic reporting. Is it that I want to use this report for a management process, or is it for basic analysis process? So we'd have to decide what kind of object we use for storing the data. There are a lot of different models that we can build in BW, either for staging data or either for analyzing data. We have different kinds of objects. If it is a detailed analysis that we'd want to do, you have objects like the DSOs, data store objects. In case it's a summarized kind of report that you would want to do, then you would go ahead and build something on an info cube. So we need to understand what kind of objects should be used in each of these layers. It depends on the kind of report that you'd want to build. All right. So here you have the info cubes and the DSOs in this layer. All right. These are called as data targets, info cubes and DSOs. In some scenarios, you might not just specifically talk about one functionality, but you might have to go ahead and bring data from different functionalities together. Like, for example, I might have a finance scenario and I might have a sales data in two separate objects. I'd want to combine both of them and bring them. In that scenario, I might build objects that basically relate both of these functionalities. In that scenario, I might create something called as multi-providers or info sets inside the BW environment. So there are different kinds of objects that we go ahead and work within the BW environment. In the ECC system, the regular terminology, which is storing data on tables, and specifically within the tables you have something called as fields. So that is basically the terminology that you use in the regular ECC system, or even if you have a database, or even if you have an Excel sheet. But once you move data into the BW environment, you have a different terminology. We call the basic objects, you have the basic objects of info objects with which you would go ahead and build the structures, right? So we call them as info objects, which are basically the building blocks of how I create any structure inside the BW environment. This is the way how I build a DSO or an info queue or a multi-provider or an info set, or for that matter, any object inside the BW environment has to be built using these info objects. The thing about BW is it is a complete system for analysis. It has the ability to extract data from your source system. It has the ability to model data and stage data inside the application itself. It also has the ability to present data to the end user. It has a proprietary reporting tool called as the Business Explorer, which can be used on top of the BW application. Business Explorer, or you call it in short as BEX. All right. So this can also be used on top of BW for reporting. You can also use business objects as the reporting layer, but the proprietary reporting tool that you would have with BW is called as BEX. Now, the thing that I'd want to explain here is during a regular cycle, what happens is your daily transactions are created in the ECC system or in your OLTP system. The regular business hours are usually, let's say, from 9 a.m. in the morning, would go until 9 p.m. in the evening. And this is where we go ahead and do our daily transactions, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. And after this transaction is complete, we would want to go ahead and move whatever data is collected for that day in the transaction system. We would want to move it into the BW system. This is not done during the time of transactions, but it is done after the transactions are complete. This is the process that we've been following for the last 20 years. Right? So here within the BW environment, when we are doing any kind of extraction, we would move data from this particular OLTP system, which could be ECC, CRM, SRM, databases, or Excel sheets. We would move it after our daily transactions are complete. Let's say we start off trying to pull data from, let's say, 10 p.m. and then load it by 6 a.m. in the morning. All right. So the window that we have for handling extraction is from 6 or 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., 8 hours for moving all the data that has been extracted, or basically the data that is collected in the transaction system. Just a quick one. All right. So once that is done, we would go ahead and load the data into different layers within the BW environment. It could be a detail layer, or it could be a summarized layer, or it could be different objects into which I go ahead and load my data. I'd be able to consume that data into reporting only once after I finish my entire loads. So if I'd want to go ahead and look at my report, I'd be able to probably see that by 7 a.m. in the morning. So by 7 a.m., I have all my reports ready. All right. So if an end user wants to look at it, you can go ahead and look at the reports by 7 a.m. in the morning. All right. Now the thing about this is the reports that you look at 7 a.m. in the morning is about the data that we have already accounted for, that we have yesterday. All right. So all the data that has been transacted yesterday, we're looking at reports as in today. So that's the biggest problem that we have with the BW environment. It has been working fine all this while, but basically what we have of these reports is data that I am looking after 12 hours to 24 hours. All right. This is the time span which is the data that I'm looking at. It is coming after a delay of 12 to 24 hours. All right. So basically, if I have already lost, let's say, $100,000 yesterday, I'll be only looking at that data into my tomorrow's reports. All right. So there is no way of how I can go ahead and minimize this unless I minimize this particular time frame. If I have lost $100,000 in my transactions yesterday, I will be only looking at my reports tomorrow. And by the time I look at my reports, these transactions have already been completed and a cumulative loss of, let's say, $100,000 has already been done. And there's no way of how I can recover that money or how I can minimize this loss, because I am looking at the reports after a gap of 12 to 24 hours from when these transactions have been created. Now, the entire scenario is moving towards how do I go ahead and minimize this loss? And this loss of 100,000 doesn't happen in one single transaction. It usually is a cumulated value of multiple transactions that happen over the entire day between 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. And so there is usually, even if we talk about losses or if we talk about profits, there is always a trend in how things work. It doesn't directly happen as 100,000 in one go. It'll be probably $5,000 or 10,000 or 7,000. It'll go ahead and have a trend of how the loss is happening, and then at the end of the day, the cumulative value is found. But there is, if we have the ability to understand that trend, that there is a trend of either a loss or a profit, you would be able to make better strategic decisions to improve. In case you're making losses, how do I contain that? How do I basically minimize my loss? So basically, understanding the trend is always necessary to cut down on losses and improve on profits. And for that to happen, you should somehow have the ability to look at your transactions as they are happening. It is not basically looking at it after the entire transactions are happening, which is basically 12 to 24 hours after your reports are created, but have the ability to look at your transactions as they are happening. And for that to happen, you need a system which is able to give you at least analysis or reports of what is happening at real time. So if you are able to look at the system and look at the reports as they are happening, then you have the ability to understand the trend. And for that reason, you have a new system that has been introduced, which is basically called as the SAP HANA application or appliance. So basically, the SAP HANA box allows you to go ahead and bring data at real time into the system. So HANA, which stands for High Performance Analytical Appliance, allows you to bring data from the transaction system into the HANA box at real time. And this is not done by any of the extractors that we have inside the ECC system, but we're going to use newer tools basically for doing that to bring data at real time. SAP has given us a few external tools like SLT, SAP's Landscape Transformation System, Business Objects Data Services, Sybase, and also you have a fourth system called as DXC. These are four different external engines which we can use to pull data from the ECC and push data into the HANA database at a real time, or at least near real time. All right. And so it is necessary that we need to understand how these uh, different engines work as well. Right. So how do I bring data into the HANA system at real time? And so we need to go ahead and bring data from these systems and then load this data at real time into the HANA box. Now what happens inside the transaction system is when there is a transaction code created, like you create a sales order or a purchase order, or you do any kind of financial transactions. Now you will have a transaction code for it, and then you will be opening that on the screen and entering the values for that specific transaction. And when that happens, there is underlying tables that onto which the data is loaded. These tables are moved from here, from the ECC system, and moved into the HANA box at real time using these individual engines. It is not necessary that you use all of these four engines. You can use one or two or all of them based on how your enterprise is planning to use them, specific to a single source or multiple source inside your system. Yes, Santosh Chinta, I can read your question. Does this course cover how to bring data from ECC to HANA using SLT? But DXC we will not be using, and basically be showing how to use DXC. But this is not a regular process that we use in enterprise DXC and Sybase. We'd majorly be using SLT and BODS. So I will be showing you how to go ahead and use SLT, how do you set it up, and also how do we use business objects data services, and how do we bring data into SAP HANA. So I'll be showing that step by step as to how you work with these two tools. I will be also covering Sybase and DXC, but it is not usually a regular use case in the enterprise. All right, these are options given. Sybase is pretty much almost it's become obsolete, and DXE is not a regular process that is being used. All right, but in case you would want to use it, I can show that as well. All right. So once we are able to bring data into SAP HANA, here we basically bring data from different tables, and then we go ahead and bring that into the HANA database or HANA appliance, and then on top of it we would go ahead and build different models. Now if I want to generate a report, I need to use a model or basically a specific way of how I can relate my tables that are here. Alright, so the SAP HANA appliance basically can allow you to create three major models. The data that you bring in from the ECC system is divided into two major sections. One, you can call it as master data, the other one is transaction data. Master data is basically reference data that you use, which is something that doesn't change over a period of time. And transaction data is something that is generated every single day. And so when you want to analyze your transaction data that keeps changing, you always have to identify and link it to reference data that is constant. And so there's always a link between master data and transaction data. The objects that you create for master data inside HANA are called as attribute views. The models that we create for transaction data, which use star schema modeling, we call them as analytic views. And then the objects where we will use complex joins, basically in case I'd want to bring in data from multiple functionalities like sales and finance and HR and things like that. If I'd want to combine and bring them, or if I'd want to use any kind of complex SQL, then I use something called as calculation views. All right. So there are three major models that we would be working with in SAP HANA. One for master data, which is the attribute views. The other two, basically, whenever we want to use analytic views, also is specific for transaction data. And calculation views is basically for any kind of complex joins that we'd want to do with the different tables that we bring in. Now, SAP HANA does not have a proprietary reporting tool, so it uses majority of business objects reporting tools and also external tools like Tableau, ClickView, and all of these on top of the SAP HANA box. All right. So HANA basically is an appliance which is a combination of software and hardware. All right. The hardware is provided by SAP's partner vendors. The software is provided by SAP itself to consume what the hardware is able to deliver and use it optimally. And so the reporting is done on top of HANA by majority of business objects reporting tools. Now, SAP HANA is an in-memory database. It's a hybrid database, meaning you're not going to store data on a regular hard drive, but you're going to store the entire data on the main memory, which is the RAM. And this RAM is very, very fast compared to the regular storage that you have on a hard drive. On a hard drive, does HANA use BEX? HANA does not use BEX, but BW on HANA uses BEX. Right. HANA uses majority of business objects reporting or predictive analytics, Lumira or ClickView or Tableau, but not Business Explorer. Right. But in case you're using BW on HANA, then you can use Business Explorer, yes. Alright, so the SAP HANA stores data on the main memory, which is called as the RAM. Alright, so when you are using data storage on the RAM, you are going to hold the data in memory. Alright, the RAM is very fast compared to our regular storage that we use on a hard drive. It is at least 300,000 times faster than the regular hard drive. And so the processing speed is extremely fast in terms of SAP HANA. Apart from that, you have two kinds of storage. One is the regular storage, which is the row storage. Then there is also the second storage, which is called as column storage. Alright, the row storage is a regular way of how we store data on a database. It is fast in terms of handling operations, in terms of inserts, updates, and deletes. But in terms of reading and reporting, the column store is extremely fast compared to the row store. And so data has to switch between the write mode and read mode as well. Between row store and column store, the instances are stored on the SAP HANA database. And that's why I also mentioned in the presentation as to how we go ahead and use the data management inside SAP HANA. Alright, so the way of how we move data is using SLT and BODS and also these other tools of Sybase and DXC. Once we move these tables into the SAP HANA database, we would go ahead and create these different models, attribute views, analytic views, and calculation views. And then we would consume these models using the different reporting tools that we can use on top of HANA. Now, all of this work of what we do on HANA is done on the Eclipse model, and that interface is called as the SAP HANA Studio. Alright, so our work is done on the SAP HANA Studio. Now, for the first time, now since SAP HANA is a database, all this while if you have looked at any of the BW applications, you will find that at the bottom you would have a database layer like Oracle or SQL or MySQL that will be used for building this application on top of the database. But now what we have is we're going to use the underlying database of HANA, which is an in-memory database for the BW application. So what we are going to do, anything that we do on the BW application will be stored on the HANA database, which is going to be extremely fast. The other change is that the BW application is centered on the extended star schema model of analysis. Extended star schema. Alright, these last 20, 25 years or 30 years where BW existed, the entire modeling was based around the extended star schema model. But SAP HANA does not support extended star schema. It supports only star schema modeling. So to accommodate this change, what they have done is the application of BW has been modified a little to accommodate the star schema modeling. And this is what we learned in BW on HANA. So what happens to the extended star schema models? How do they convert in terms of star schema? How are they very similar to the objects that we have inside the SAP HANA Studio in terms of analytic views or in terms of calculation views? Alright, so how do we go ahead and model these in terms of the star schema? Now, to keep that simple as much as possible for a BW guy, the development or basically to build a model has been retained the same, meaning if I'm creating a cube, I'm going to do it exactly like how I do it on a regular BW system. But on the underlying side, there is architecturally changes that are happening because the SAP HANA database supports only star schema modeling. And so we're going to try and understand what are the changes that we have on the BW on HANA application, which basically will create models in terms of star schema only. Alright. Now, since these modelings of star schema are pretty similar between the BW system and the HANA box, it allows you to basically move these objects from BW onto HANA and also from HANA onto BW. All right. All right, so there is a question here from George. Um, if we can report from ECC uh, to HANA using the BI client tools, why do we have to bring in the dataset from HANA to BI before doing the reports again? One quick question here. Your question is very legitimate, and when you look at trying to report data on HANA, it seems why do we need the BW environment? Now, HANA has a few limitations that you are using the main memory. The RAM is something that basically allows you to go ahead and store a certain amount of data. The warehouse has millions of rows of data stored over 10 to 15 years of data from the ECC system onto the warehouse. The SAP HANA system is basically used for bringing real-time reports. You cannot store so much data on the SAP HANA database all in a course that you can use. So what you would do usually is that it can go ahead and hold certain amount of data. But if I'd want to go ahead, see, and also within an enterprise, it is not every report being a real-time report. There will be a few real-time reports through which you would want to go ahead and look at your data at real time. But there are also a lot of other reports which are basically which are not basically on emergency, but you can go ahead and load the data in the regular process by scheduled loading. All right. So those kind of for all of those you will need BW. The modeling that you have in HANA is not on par with what you have inside BW. For that kind of modeling, you will be still using BW environment. All right. So your question of why do I have to move data into HANA and why do I have to move it from HANA into BW? I am not going to move data from my HANA into BW. The objects that I load inside the HANA database can be consumed directly in the BW environment. That is why we have these mixed scenarios where within the HANA Studio itself, I have the ability to consume my BW models. I also have the ability to consume models from HANA inside the BW as well. So which basically means that I can load data at real time here and consume the models directly inside BW to look at it at real time as well. So that is the ability that we have because of BW 7.5 on HANA. So the first time the BW guy is able to access the database directly and is able to consume these database directly from outside into the BW application, or we can go ahead and create these models inside the BW application and consume them on the HANA database as well, or you can use them side by side approach as well. So that is the basic ability that we bring in inside the BW on 7.5, 7.5 on HANA, and the addition with HANA. So all this while we did not have access into the underlying database, but now we have the access into the underlying database. And so we have the ability to consume these models on the underlying database. So in case you create a queue and you load that in here, indirectly we're loading it onto the HANA database itself because we're using the underlying HANA database. So you can go ahead and consume that straight away as well. So this ability is only because you're using HANA as an underlying database and you have the SAP HANA Studio, right? Any questions, anybody, so far? All right. No, I hope you basically have an idea about how these different tools are placed in the landscape as of now. All right. So let me continue from here. What are the components of SLT? SLT itself is an engine. It stands for SAP's Landscape Transformation System. So we'll be talking about Santosh Chinta. NLS is nearline storage. Basically, how do we go ahead and store data inside SAP HANA, and how do we consume that in terms of write mode and read mode, which is basically the nearline storage. We will be looking into it. As a developer, there is not a lot that you can do from developers and except for using these processes at the end of your process chain for automation. But as a basis guy, you will go ahead and convert these from write mode to read mode. These operations can be done majorly by basis guys with administration rights. But for a developer, this is not really of use. This course will basically cover administration of objects in both environments, both in BW and in HANA, and also on mixed modes. Yes, George. Anil Kumar, your question was what are the components of SLT? SLT basically is an engine. It allows you to go ahead and bring data at real time into HANA. This SLT or data provisioning is directly embedded into the SAP HANA Studio so that your interface inside SAP HANA Studio allows you to directly import the data from the ECC system directly onto the HANA um, database at real time. All right. But if I have to go and configure this, I'll have to go into the LT server. The transaction code is LTR, and I'll have to set up the RFC connections between my source system, which is either ECC or CRM, SRM, or BW, or even any other database, and then I'll have to connect it to the HANA system. So that part of it I will be teaching you, and I'll show you how to import data at real time into HANA as well. All right. Going further on, the basic view of implementation options that we have. So here we have different layers that we have brought into HANA, and then now we would be working with different tools that basically allow you to transform data outside and bring data into HANA. But now we slowly have newer versions where data that we load into HANA can also be transformed inside the SAP HANA system. So we have tools like STI and SDQ that have been added into the BW environment, which basically allows you to integrate it with different source, and then we can also go ahead and transform the data. We can check for data quality as well. We also have Power Designer for modeling and SAP HANA Modeler specifically for the HANA design. All right. So on one side we have the BW scenario where we go ahead and work on the core part of BW. On one side we have the objects that we can design only on the HANA side or native HANA side. Now we're trying to bring both of these together and use them with the best of features from both of them to be integrated. And so you have something called as a mix architecture and a mix scenario where we're trying to bring all of these together. Now the BW ways of extraction, all of these are going to remain as they are, but you will have additional provisioning methods of using it with SLT and business objects data services as well added into the mixed scenario. We will also have different models that are newly created apart from the regular modeling that you have in BW. The extended star schema of creating DSOs and info cubes and all of these. Along with this, you also have mixed scenarios where you can create advanced DSOs. You can go ahead and create open ODS views and composite providers and all that. Let me list down the newer objects. So you have integration of data, integration of model, and integration of interface as well. So basically data from the HANA database and also data from the BW application, all of it is there in one space. Model integration is to use objects that I have created in HANA, like my attribute view and my analytic view, which can be consumed directly in my BW. Likewise, the objects that I create in my BW system, like info cubes and DSOs, can be consumed inside the HANA Studio. Interface integration is that I can go ahead and call the HANA application directly inside BW, or I can call the BW application inside the HANA Studio. I can work side by side directly on the application and also on the objects to create them on the Eclipse edition as well. So we have data integration, model integration, and interface integration. All of these are there. Like I told, so here the SAP HANA system has newer features of how I can go ahead and integrate different source systems and also basically transform data using the SDI. Smart Data Integration allows you to integrate any source, just like how you could do it on data services, and also have the ability to transform data inside the SAP HANA system. We also have the SDQ, which is Smart Data Quality, which allows you to check for the quality of data inside SAP HANA. All right. So the edition on HANA basically is done on the Eclipse version, where we would go ahead and work on creating objects both from HANA and also from BW. In HANA, the objects that we create are called as views, attribute views, analytic views, and calculation views. And inside the BW environment, you have a range of objects that you can create. Now, the objects that you create in the Eclipse allows you to basically bring your or build your models on the HANA views plus the BW models that you can create. That's the ability of the mixed scenarios. Um, Eclipse and HANA Studio are not the same. The interface on which you would work is called as the HANA Studio. On the HANA Studio, you have something called as perspective, and in that perspective, you have BW modeling. And if you go in there, you can go ahead and use the Eclipse version of it. All right. The HANA Studio is built on the Eclipse version, so you would basically access BW from the Eclipse version. That's why it's called as Edition on HANA. So here classic modeling objects and SAP HANA modeling objects, you call them as SAP HANA modeling objects. You have some staging options and HANA staging options with 7.4. The interface of SAP GUI modeling and also the Eclipse modeling can be used together, and this is called as Eclipse modeling, or we call that as Edition for SAP HANA. What is Eclipse version? So let me quickly try and see if I can show you something. So if I go into the SAP logon pad, this is basically how I'd access my BW environment. So if I'd want to go into BW 7.5 or 7.4 or ECC or any other system, I'll have to go ahead and double click on this, and this will open. Let's say if I go ahead and if I want to log into any of these tools, I double click on it and it basically opens an application here. I'd go ahead and type in my username, and then I'd go ahead and type in my password. and it allows me to log into this system. If I go into transaction code RSA1, it logs me into my BW data warehousing workbench, and that is usually how I'd log into my system. Alright, but if I'm working on the HANA system, I have another tool here. So if I go into the start menu and if I click on the SAP HANA Studio, this will open the Eclipse version. Alright, this is the SAP HANA Studio. Alright, so this is how the Eclipse looks like. You can have different kinds of systems here. BW on HANA system, the regular HANA box and all that. So if I log in, right click and log on to this, it gives you different options. You can go and build the models in here and all that. Now in SAP system, you have something called as transaction code. So you can go on to the top, and then here you could, in the context menu, you go ahead and type in the name of the transaction. All right. But we don't have so many screens in HANA. So what they have is something called as perspectives. All right. So here we are on the regular modeling perspective. So if I click on Windows, if I go into perspective, there are a whole lot of perspectives that I can use. In case I'm an ABAP guy, I can go ahead and use ABAP, or in case I'm a BW guy, I can click on BW modeling and then use this perspective. All right. Or if I am a Java guy, or if I'm trying to do something on administration, based on which screen that I want, I'd want to bring that up. So if I'm clicking on BW modeling, the system allows me to bring the BW environment here. All right, so it lets me go ahead and create my BW connection here, and allows me to log into the BW system. And on top, there is also another tool here, Open SAP GUI, so I can click on it and basically browse into which system that I'd want to connect to in terms of the BW environment. And then it allows me to directly link onto that. Just give me a quick moment here. All right. So here, once I log into the system, I have the ability to go ahead and connect to the BW GUI. So here in this particular system, this is the Eclipse way of working. So I have the objects that I can create on regular Eclipse in here. And I also have the objects that I can create on the regular BW. Once I click on this option of connecting to the SAP GUI, this allows to open the entire BW application directly here. So you have the ability to work directly on the application here, and also parallelly work on the Eclipse version here. So that allows you to work side by side. So as we go ahead and look at the next session, we will go ahead and see how we can go ahead and act. For some technical reason, this is not opening us up right now. All right. Now, this server will be available for all of you. All right. So once you register for this particular curriculum, now these servers will be available so that all of you have the ability to access these servers and then use them to build these models. All right. These are integrated servers, and so when you're using the SAP BW edition for HANA, there are a few objects that will become obsolete, and there are a few newer objects that will be created. For people who are already on BW, this chart basically helps you in how you can go ahead and create these on these objects. All right, so here you have the regular data store objects and info cubes and all of these, you will have them replaced with advanced DSOs, because the basic architecture one, extended star schema, is going to be overwritten by the star schema modeling, in which case the DSO and the cube become very similar in terms of functionality. So you would go ahead and use something called as the advanced DSOs in that scenario. Then in case you're using virtual providers, you would be using it as an open ODS view. And then for any kind of complex, you would have composite providers, which allows you to join multiple objects using either unions or joins. So we'll see all of these scenarios as we go along. And also we will club them with the functionalities and how we can extract data at real time. All right. So any questions if you have, you can go ahead and ask these right now. I'd be able to unmute you so that in case if you have any questions, I'd be able to take them. Smart data access is also there, just that for doing smart data access, we have to go ahead and enable some of the features from Putty as well to connect it to other source systems. I'll see if I can cover that. In the provisioning, you have two options, which is smart data access and remote sources. We've used that in the past. If that is available, we can go ahead and do that. So, all right. So going ahead, if you have any questions, you could, in terms of how these sessions go and the access to the servers and any kind of questions relating to fees, these can be answered by Kalyan. All right. Kalyan is the one who basically organizes this training from Techie Training. So he'll help you with basically setting this up. The sessions will start from the 26th, which is the Monday. You will have a reminder email as well. After this session is complete, you will have an email which basically gives you the content of what we're going to see in this particular curriculum. It will also give you the schedule of what we are going to cover, and when our session is, it will give you the link to connect to that session. You could go to Techie Training website and then you could look for the content as well if you would want to. In the unit 2, Anil Kumar, your question will be, will you be going over DMO and BW setup? Yeah, basically that will be screenshots, because I cannot go ahead and do that live here. It is an administration activity that you go ahead and do. It is not a developer's way of how you go ahead and do any migration. So I'll be showing you basically the options that we have for data migration. How to model the interfaces or how to model the integration. I'll be teaching you, Ravi, specifically how to model integration, and then how do we integrate scenarios from BW and also HANA. I will be showing you all of these. So all the topics that we have looked into, everything will be covered practically with a scenario. All right, it is not presentations and theory that I'd be showing you. I'll be showing you practically, showing you scenarios, how to load data into those objects, and how do we consume that at the reporting layer as well. All right, so the sessions basically here, the duration is 45 hours. We'll have every day 1.5 hours of session. Might go on to 2 hours as we continue. But right now we'll start off with 1.5 hours of sessions, which basically give you an overview about that thing. So we're looking at 30 sessions, 1.5 hour each, which basically will be 45 hours. If we are able to extend it to 2 hours, then we'd be able to do it in 3.5 weeks. All right. So any kind of questions that you'd have in terms of training or in terms of any kinds of server access and all of these, you can speak to Kalyan. He's also available on WhatsApp and Viber. And also this is the number on which you can call in case you want to register for this course, or you can send out an email. In case you have any technical issues during this training, we have a technical support team that are available 24/7. They'd be able to support you with the exercises in case you have any issues completing exercises. They will help you in figuring that out. And also in case of any kind of server issues to fix them, they'll also be available. You can also visit our website, which is techietraining.com. I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Emmanuel, and I have over 14 years of experience on the SAP platform. I worked extensively with BW Business Objects, Data Services, HANA, and BW on HANA. So any kinds of questions that you have on any of these areas, you could go ahead and shoot at me during this course, or you can send emails specific to what you'd want. Would we have exercises? Are there any material that you would have during this training? Yes, absolutely, Gautam. There will be a lot of exercises that you will have to complete, one from a side of what we cover on every day, and also on a weekly basis when you have Saturday and Sunday to basically understand what we've covered over the week. We'd have exercises that will cover different scenarios as well. Right, so exercises are there, and you will all have to work on the same server. Each will have your own individual username and password, but I'd be able to monitor what you are doing and how you're following the session based on the exercises that you'd be able to complete. All right. Any other questions, anybody? For certification, yes, you do not have the BW 7.5 on HANA certification yet, but yeah, so this will basically allow you to complete the certification, yes. With simple logistics, I didn't get your question, Ravi. I will be showing you reporting on most of business objects reporting tools, so you should be able to. I'm not trying to teach business objects here, but in case you have any questions with reporting tools, I'll be able to go ahead and show them. Yes, I will be integrating them with HANA and consuming the models directly from HANA using these reporting tools. No, Ravi Anand. Are you going to teach S4 HANA with simple logistics? No, that is not a part of this curriculum. Uh, Ramesh, Krish, and Parthiban, do you have any questions? You raised your hands, or anybody has any other questions? You can raise your hand. Just a moment. Yes, Parthiban, I have opened your line. Can you hear me? Ramesh?
Yeah, nothing for you.
Hi. Yeah. Any questions, Ramesh?
Nothing from me.
Okay, cool. There are no prerequisites for this course. Basically, if you have an idea with SQL, if you have an idea with database, if you have an understanding about what primary keys are, foreign keys are, understand fields and tables, yeah, that is more than enough for me to build on top of that. But if you have knowledge on SQL, that will be a lot of help, because we'd be working from now on usually on the HANA database, and database language is SQL. So it'll be good if you can have a little brush up of SQL. Right. I understand, Parthiban, that you are new to SAP. We will be covering it from a very base level. So, in case if you have any questions, or if you would want any questions or specific on SAP, and we'll be able to help you. And yeah, so you might have to put in a little more effort if you are new to SAP. But yeah, when I teach, I'd be teaching it from a very fundamental perspective so that you should also be able to follow. A lot of people who are new to SAP as well. So yeah, we'd be covering it in that perspective. Any chance of covering the utilities to admin the HANA DB? Gautam, no, not that part. Santosh Chinta, I'll ask these technical guys from Techie Training to send the documents to you. Usually after the registration is complete, that's when they'd usually send the documents out. All right, just that all of you are on the same page. The sessions will start from the 26th. All right, so we'd have the first session on the 26th of September at 9 p.m. EST. So if you're in the US, it's 26, which is the Monday at 9 p.m. EST. If you're in India, the session will start at 6:30 a.m. on Tuesday. All right, Ravi Anand, don't worry. You can come for the first session, and then I'll show you basically what you need to learn, what are the prerequisites, and how difficult is it in terms of learning HANA. All right, so don't worry about trying to prepare right away. Uh, I'll be basically giving you what is the prerequisite, what you need to know, how you can practice, and all of that will be set up for you. If you are from a non-IT background, if you have an understanding about what are the functional areas that we'd be working in SAP on the ECC front, if you'd have a little overview of that, then that'll be a lot of help. Like, what are the different areas like finance? In finance, what are the general ledger, accounts payable, accounts receivable, then material management? What options do you have in that? Or in terms of HR, or what are the different functionalities, sales and distributions? And what are the tables that are there in each of these? If you have the ability to look through that, that will be a lot of help for people who are not from the SAP background or who are coming new into this. If you go into Google and type in SAP table relationships, you will have a PDF that comes up. All right, SAP table relationships. So if you can go ahead and look through that, that will be a lot of help for you and also for me. Basically gives you the ability to understand what are the different functionalities that are there and how they are related one to the other. So, um, Parthiban, you don't need any specific laptop. As long as you have internet access, you will be able to access the software. All of this is built on the remote service because HANA uses very high RAM, close to a minimum of 128 GB RAM to 4 TB RAMs. So these you cannot build it on your laptop. So we have servers that are available. We'll give you access using the remote desktop. So as long as you have uh, a laptop which can access internet, you can use them 24/7. All right. So you don't need any specific laptops for this particular installation or anything. Okay. All right, guys. After completion of the course, what certification do I need to acquire to obtain a job? Will you guys help me with our resumes and job placement. Uh, Definitely we'd be sending you resumes which have BW, HANA, BW and HANA options. So we will help you with the resume part. Kalyan will help you with the placement. I'll give you the certification code because right now we do not have the 7.5 certification code, but I'll let you know on the first session on the 26th. Nazmul. All right, guys. Thank you for your time. I'll hold it off at this point, but we will go ahead and resume sessions from the 26th. All right. Keep in mind, we'll be sending you reminders as well. Once the session is complete, you will have an email on the email ID with which you have registered. You will have the recorded session sent to you. You'll also have the content part sent to you. In case you want to look at the content, you can also go into techietraining.com. You'll find the content there, but that will also be sent to you along with the email. All right, so just keep a note of your schedules. So from Monday, 9 p.m. EST, we'll have our regular sessions. All right. Once again for your time. This is Emmanuel signing off. Have a nice evening and a nice day ahead. Bye, guys.